On the third day, Nnenna walked into his son's room and found him lying on the floor. His eyes focused on the ceiling. He wasn't blinking or moving. His mother called his name severally, but there was no response. She moved closer, then reached out to give him a shake. The moment her hand came in contact with his body, a force threw her across the room. She screamed and fell to the ground. Over 5 decades ago in the city of Enugu, Mazi Olise had waited for years to hear the cry of a baby in his home. His people had become impatient with him. Mazi Olise was an only child of his parents, so his family was anxious for him to produce an offspring, especially a male child who would continue the bloodline. Olise was greatly loved by his parents. He had everything he needed while growing up. Because he was an only child, his parents got him to marry at age 20. Olise and his wife Nnenna had been married for 6 years and had no child. His parents suggested to him to take another wife. Initially he refused, but as the years went by, he started to consider his people's suggestion. One day, he called his wife and said to her, "I have waited patiently for you to give me a child, but that has not happened. I am tired of waiting, Nnenna. I have decided to take another wife." "Nnam, please." Nnenna got down on her knees. "I know your family is on your neck for a child, but please, give me some more time. How much time do you want me to give you, Nnenna? It's been 6 years since we got married. I'm tired of waiting. I know the doctors have said there's nothing wrong with the both of us, but I can't just sit down, fold my hands and do nothing. I have made up my mind. I am taking another wife. Nnenna, you are still my wife, and you will still live with me, but I have to try my luck with someone else," Olise said. Nnenna was sad. Should she just fold her hands and wait for another woman to take her place? She had to do something. That evening, she went to church to see her pastor. Pastor Ebuka encouraged her to wait on God for his promise. He prayed with her and offered to come speak with her husband. Nnenna declined. Mazi Olise was not a church-going person. He did not believe in God and did not want to get associated with anything Christianity. He often gave Nnenna hard times and even went as far as banning her from fellowship. But he let her continue after Nnenna pleaded with him and promised not to disturb him with her faith. After much pleading with Olise, he still went ahead and took a second wife. Egodi was not a troublemaker, but she was not particularly fond of Nnenna. The relationship between the trio seemed weird. There was always that big elephant in the room waiting to be addressed. Nnenna tried to comport herself to remain calm, despite the fact that she was screaming inside and no one could hear her. 4 months after Egodi was married, she conceived. Olise was over the moon with joy. Nnenna felt terrible. So she was the problem all along. But the doctors had said she was fine. She was devastated by the fact that Egodi was about to take her place permanently. The coming days were even worse. Her mother-in-law made it her life's ambition to torment her. Nnenna tried to endure as much as she could. Some days, she would lock herself up in her room all day and no one would care, not even her husband. Twice, she packed her bag and traveled to visit her mother. Olise was unbothered. Even when she overstayed the period of time, she said she would. 6 months after Egodi got pregnant, Nnenna found out she was pregnant too. Olise's behavior toward her changed. He became more caring about her. Her mother-in-law and Egodi were indifferent. But that did not bother Nena. What mattered to her was that her husband had started to pay attention to her again. 3 months later, Egodi gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. Olise named her Adako. Olise and her mother seemed happy that finally they could hear the cry of a baby in the house. But what their hearts really desired was a male child. Nana seemed glad about it. She prayed every day that she would be the one to give Olise a male child, at least the first one. Months later, her prayers were answered. Olise could not contain his joy. Even his mother's attitude toward Nana took a 365-degree turn. All of a sudden, she wanted to cook, she wanted to clean, she wanted to bathe and do everything for her daughter-in-law. At last, their prayers had been answered. Olise showered her with so much love and attention. He apologized for the way he and his mother treated her. Nne, I'm so sorry for the way I behaved and reacted these past months. I was under a lot of pressure from my family. Mama, hey, I understand, she said as she hugged her husband. Being a father made Olise very proud and happy. He took good care of his wives and children and was ready to provide whatever they needed. As the years went by, Egodi gave birth 2 more times to 2 beautiful girls again. The children grew and started attending school. When Eze clocked 10, strange things started to happen. He fell sick and was taken to several hospitals, but each time the doctors found nothing wrong with him. 5 days after he falls sick, he would recover without medical assistance. This became a pattern. His sickness seemed to occur at a particular time every month, and this went on for months. Even the school authority invited his parents to complain of his strange behavior. His teacher had complained on several occasions. Eze would be in class, but he will not participate in class activities. He would just stare into space and will not respond to calls or touch. These strange occurrences bothered his parents a lot. Olise was troubled and did not know what to do. This was his only son, and he did not want anything to happen to him. He sought medical help, but there was no explanation for what was happening to his son. Eze had become withdrawn and will not speak to anyone. His school had written to his parents asking them to keep him at home until he got better. For 2 days, he did not eat or bathe, and he had refused to leave his room and will not even speak with anyone, even his mother. On the 3rd day, Nena walked into his son's room and found him lying on the floor. His eyes focused on the ceiling. He wasn't blinking or moving. His mother called his name severally, but there was no response. She moved closer, then reached out to give him a shake. The moment her hand came in contact with his body, a force threw her across the room. She screamed and fell to the ground. She managed to get herself up and out of the room. She came back moments later with her husband. Egodi followed too. She was curious to see what was happening. When they entered the room, they found Eze standing by his bedside. There was a strange aura in the room. He looked angry. Eze! Eze! His father called. What is wrong with you?
Don't call me that,
replied Eze. His voice was not the voice of a 10 years old, certainly not the voice of a boy they have lived and raised for 10 years. A knock at the door interrupted them. Egodi went to see who was at the door. As soon as she let Pastor Ebuka in, a scream came from the room. Both the pastor and Egodi ran towards the direction of the room. Pastor Ebuka was praying in tongues. He had felt a strange presence the moment he stepped into the house. Eze was looking very angry. Nena was on the floor crying out and rubbing her eyes. Eze had slapped her across the face when she tried to grab him. The pastor intensified his prayers. Nena cried out for help. I can't see. I can't see a thing. Someone help me. I can't see. She stood up and stumbled across the room to find the pastor, who reached out to grab her. Meanwhile, Olisa and Egodi were standing by the corner, terrified. What have you done, Nena? Asked Pastor Ibuka. I told you to wait on God for his promise. You didn't. Now you have invited the devil into your home. Nena, what is he talking about? Asked Olisa. This is not a time for questions, replied the pastor. He stretched out his hands towards Eze and started to pray. The prayers troubled Eze. He shouted, Shut up! Shut up! This is none of your business. Who are you? Asked Pastor. In the mighty name of Jesus, who are you? I am balance, son of God. Pastor Ibuka continued to pray. Why are you here? What is your mission here? My mission is to do my mother's bidding. What is your mother's bidding? Asked the pastor. Havoc, pain, grief, and death in the family. In the mighty name of Jesus, the name given above every name, I command you to loose your grip over this body. This is my body, my dwelling. In the mighty name of Jesus, I command you, return to where you came from. Eze continued to scream. Pastor Ibuka continued to pray, and suddenly he dropped to the floor, lifeless. There was a sudden calm in the room. Eze, Nena called out, but there was no response. Eze, Olisa called out, but there was no response. Olisa went to the lifeless body and lifted him in his arms. Nena struggled and made her way to the lifeless body of her son. They wept bitterly. That was never your son, said the pastor. You have been living with evil all along. Only God knows what would have happened if he had lived longer with you. Nena, what is he talking about? Demanded Olisa. I am sorry, my husband, but you left me with no choice. I was afraid of losing my place to Egodi, so I traveled to Umueri to see my mother. She took me to Mirinze, where the water goddess gave me a son. I was supposed to return him to the goddess at 10 years old, but I couldn't. So I have been living with a spirit all this while, Nena. You made me believe I had a son. How evil can you get? My husband, please forgive me. I am so sorry. I just wanted a child of my own. Pastor Ibuka prayed for everyone in the family. Olisa took the lifeless body to the cemetery and buried it. He ended his marriage to Nena. Nena returned to her mother in the village, blind. Moral lessons. We cannot serve God and Mammon at the same time. If we're trusting God for a promise, we must wait on him. He is ever faithful and will always come through with his promises. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. If you were blessed by this story, let me know in the comment section. Please share the story with your family or friends who you think will enjoy it as well. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and turn on your notifications so that you will know each time I upload a new video. Thank you so much for all the love and support you have shown me on this channel. You are amazing. God bless you. Bye.